get away from going from photographs and doing plein air painting and portrait painting on the blackboard. It's similar, and it's easier for me at least if I have a simple palette to work with, because there's other things to think about. So I started reading about them, and this is the great thing about this gallery I started. I have these others with me, and I'm learning from them, challenging. And Dan Warren's in the audience here, and he came up with the ideas as well. For instance, we were talking about values and hue, and composition use as well. Bill, values do the heavy lifting, and the color gets all the credit. That was an enlightened me right there. I started thinking about that more, and I'm going to talk about that with this thing here that I did. So, and Bill Robichuk introduces me to Zorn, and so I put together a simple palette, which was yellow ochre, titanium white, ivory black, and cadmium red light. Back in Zorn's time, he called it vermilion, but the closest they have to it now is cadmium red light. So, you're working with just a very few colors. And there's no blue, by the way, as you can see. But the idea is that the black provides that. If you add white, it gets gray, and it has a tendency to be kind of bluish. And if you look up Zorn, you see these beautiful pieces of this work he did. It's just a simple palette. But anyways, I said, this is great. This is what I've been looking for. I've got to keep this process simple. But anyways, we're getting ahead of myself. But I wanted to explain that, sort of tell you what the gallery is about to me, what it means to me, and also I feel really good about learning new things. And I started doing these portraits, and everyone I'm doing is getting better now. And it's pretty exciting for me, And I said, well, I'm starting to learn this thing a little bit, and I'm changing this and doing this, and pretty good. I feel we're all pretty, with some young people here, but most of us are at an age where, we really don't want to give it up. Yeah, I hope not. We try not to anyway.
No blue for the eyes?
Huh?
No blue for the eyes?
No blue. Right. No, that's right, Mom. You brought that up. That was the big thing about Zorn. They said, hey, there's no blue. Because, the colors, the three basic colors are red, yellow, and blue. And here was a palette without blue, of course he used the black. But people kind of suspected that maybe he snuck a little blue in there. Anyway, because when he died, they went into a studio, and there were 22 tubes of cobalt blue there. So what I've done is, I've got my palette set up, and I'm going to bring some cobalt blue too. It's nice to have. But even if you wanted to, you'll see a picture that I use it to make the clothing color, big color or something blue. It's kind of neat. Well, anyway, well, let's get started. This thing is in two parts. There's a video here I'm going to show you. It lasts about 8 or 9 minutes. It was produced by the town of Brunswick 2 years ago during the COVID crises. Bowdoinham puts on a open studio on Farm Day every year. People come around and visit all the farms and visit the studios, but because of COVID, people weren't getting out. So they said, well, in place of that, we'll make a video of all of these places. So they hired a videographer. He went to all the farms and all the different artists and produced these videos. She's very talented, professional video. So this is quite good. Everybody's just great. So I'll show you that, and then we'll talk about that. And then after that, I've got some slides of different pieces I've done. And in the slides, I've kind of showed you the stages of each one of these paintings, so you can see how I started, maybe with, in a lot of cases, a photograph, and then the steps I went through to get to the painting. to show you, over the years, what I have found is a way to do that kind of painting. Just everyone here, I'm sure, does it differently, but that's my way. And but anyway, so we'll look at the video and go from there. When I think about what art means to me, it's a way of expressing what I feel like. You can't always do that, but through your art, you can't even talk to people about it. You have to just paint it and make it, that's me. That's what I think about this. And it's a joy to be able to reveal yourself that way, I guess. I've always been interested in art. Throughout my career, I just didn't have much time to devote to art, except for at different intervals, I would try to take an art course when I had the opportunity. I did go back to Penn State University in my mid-career in 45 to get a master's degree in engineering, and at that time I took some art courses there. But it wasn't until I retired I really had the time. I worked mostly from photographs. I think my work has evolved. I think I'm painting better now than I did 13 years ago. And each painting I do, I really feel as though I'm starting to do some things with that painting I couldn't do in the previous painting. This one up here is an acrylic painting of my father-in-law, who was a dairy farmer. I was inside the plant and I photographed it. It was all dark around me, and I had to open the lens up. So I got him and everything, but everything beyond the building was completely whited out because of all the light. So I made all that up. That's all out of my imagination, the cows and the pasture and all that. I think I took more time to do this painting than any of my paintings. It's from a photograph that I took late 60s, I would say. And this is my wife's uncle. We had horses. And on Thanksgiving, our family, he invited our family to come up and ride some of these horses. I think I spent 130 hours on that painting. I spent a lot of time trying to get the details. It was especially difficult to get this jacket here with the faded flowers. I was fascinated by the blue color in Uncle Jess's hat. I probably painted that blue about 10 times to get the right color, just changing the shading a little bit. I guess some people would say I'm a colorist. They'd say one trait that defines me as an artist. They would say, well, he does well with color. My mother was very good at color. Different artists have different strengths that way. And getting the right red, this jacket here, it's trial and error. My friend, we're fishing up in northern Maine, and I photographed him fly fishing. So I used the photograph to get him, and maybe the way his fly curled out here, but the background is mostly made up out of my imagination, and I borrowed actually all of the water from another photograph of him fishing in another pond around Waterville. So I would take, because I like the way, because in that pond we did have trout swirling, we had a nice shadow, and so I'm trying to play the shadows against the white here and the interesting shapes. Just in the shadows alone, I try to create interest. Up here is a home in Bangor. When my wife and I first retired in 2003, we house sat for my daughter in Bangor. She bought a new house. And I would take walks, and I went out one winter walk, had my camera, and took this picture right after a snowfall. I remember I took it into one of my adult ed classes, and I was making these lines. I was using a ruler or something, and they were making fun of me because I'm an engineer. There he is, the engineer. But I thought it was really important to get these black-word lines, even though it was painstaking. What you have to do is you do the line, the dark line, so you paint it in, and the line is much darker than it should be. Then you go in with the brown, and you paint out the dark line, leaving just a little bit of a tiny suggestion. So you have to go through 2 or 3 times, iterations, to get the effect. These are more generalized, the background, the homes in the background. And in art, one of the principles of good art is contrast, so I'm contrasting detail with less detail. Here's a print I made. It's a high quality print. It's called a sheet clay print. And here's another one. It's a recent painting in place on the Abercadasset Road. This is titled Ducks in the Abbey, Scenes Around Bowdoinham, so it's a series of cards. And these are the strawberry fields down on Browns Point Road. So I was trying to, in the last couple of years, do paintings of recognizable places around Bowdoinham, and drove by this one day on the way home, and see, it looked really nice. I took a photograph, did the painting, but then I added in the old car, and these kids playing, I tried to put clothing on them that maybe they had back in those days. It's nothing like putting people in a landscape. It increases the difficulty a lot, but it increases the interest a lot. A couple of years ago, I transitioned from acrylics to oil paints. Oil paints, you can get richer colors with, and I like them for that reason. This is the Abbey. This is where the Abercadasset River comes in to the bay. I drove by and I saw ducks, and they're only in there for a couple of weeks. So I went home, got my camera, came back, and by that time I think the ducks were gone. And then I had to make a choice, do I want to have ducks in it or not? And in this case I decided that the ducks would make it a better painting, so I just I went on the internet and I got a lot of pictures of ducks and different ways they fly and so on, and then I kind of used that to go on and put them in. When I was painting this, I went back to the scene and I walked around out there to look at these bushes in detail, and I said, aha, these are red, these are briars. That red helps the green and vice versa. They both work together. And I put a couple things up there. It's in progress. That makes it different than the other. This is the same area as the one we were just talking about. This again is the Abbey. This is the Abercadasset River coming back into the bay with this farthest in. Different time of year. This is spring, early spring. The picture is not complete. It has the potential to be a really good painting if I could get a really feeling of light coming in here. Light is that's the whole game for artists almost, in most cases, the light. How the light plays, sunlight plays, or any light plays. So that's what I'm working on. What I'm going to do is I'm going to paint this area in here a little bit. It's already painted, but the way I paint layers. When you paint something a certain color, then it has to kind of also harmonize with the other colors. I have 5 yellows here, so I'll try to, pick the ones I think I'm going to need. I'm a better artist today than I was 2 years ago, I think. And so like so many things in life, sometimes, time, just keep at it. Keep building. Like a building, you start and keep building, and pretty soon you have this, something you never dreamed you could do. I think what I'm striving for, and I think I achieve it with some of these paintings anyway, is an emotional response in people. They connect with the painting in some way, and it gives them a positive feeling. I'm trying to paint ultimately, beauty. The higher the level of beauty, the more I think I've accomplished what I want to accomplish, a successful painting. Okay, that's it. That's for the big arbor. She did a great job. Anyway, no,
Sorry. I know what I'm doing here.
Yeah, that's the next thing. But anyway, okay. Anybody have some things that come to mind that you want to talk about?
You're very modest because it is a really, really beautiful portfolio of paintings, gorgeous work. It's hard to believe you really only started when you retired.
Really got going then, yes.
Yeah.
I did take.
It's some beautiful work, and I like the kind of courage that you have to add in things if you don't see them. As some people are really married to that image and, you know, the picture, and I think that that is what an artist needs to do to you know, make the work really what it needs to be, not just duplication, because we're not Xerox machines, you know. So I like that you decided, you know, if something needed birds or the grasses, whatever, you know, the children. That's
Yeah, and I kind of criticize myself because I'm working a lot of times with most of the Maine, thinking not more recent, something else, but that I'm a slave to this painting. But you bring up the point that no, because, you know, I'm using that as inspiration, and I'm making changes and adding in, and so that changes in my mind. It makes me feel better, you know, this is a more creative process.
And subtracting,
And what?
not just adding, subtracting.
Subtracting, yeah,
Yeah.
Marvin, yeah, adding in, yeah, right, taking stuff out. And so, you know, yeah, it helps me, you know, to have something to go on. Just to dream it up out of my head is tough. You go outside and paint in plein air, yeah, you can do that. But when you have these paintings are lengthy, they take a long time, details, so, you know, photographs in the studios. So I'm doing some big paintings, long-term paintings, and I do a lot of small stuff that takes it quickly. I have both going on. What's that?
I enjoyed being in class with you and others because you're living through the decisions as the artists are making them. It was nice to be in class and explore what you were exploring. And I remember the one painting where the barn color kept changing.
Oh, yeah, Deborah made fun of that, yeah, I changed it for color many times, in the sky and everything, yeah, and she had a question, her said, you know, don't touch it, and of course she turned around and I would change it. Yeah.
I was wondering if you could expand a little bit on you said you were an engineer or architecture? And how did you find yourself being more, how did you bring that into your art a lot? Other than your clapboards?
Oh, yeah, really. Oh, I think so. Yeah, in the film you saw where I brought it in when I was making the clapboards.
But do you find
I
you
had a
get,
ruler or something.
is
Yeah,
that the
no.
kind of architecture that you did or engineering that you were doing instead of designing homes and buildings and?
Yeah, building construction mostly, a lot of it on site. Well, in the slides I'm going to show you a series where a lot of my thinking is kind of based on the engineering. I think of it as a metaphor to building a building or house in a three-step process. Rather than take it all in at once and try to do it and just go on paint. Well, if you did plenty, you more or less have to do that, but with these longer paintings. So step one is layout, step two is values, and step three is color. But if you borrow that from my engineering work, building a big building, some of them multi-story, multi-million-dollar buildings, you have the excavation and the foundation. That we'll consider that one step. And then you have the superstructure, which is the framing, and that might include the cladding and the roofing and closing the building, step two, and then you finish it off inside. So it's kind of a systematic process. And in a big building, I mean, you've got to take each step at a time. And the other thing about that process too is, and everybody can relate to this, you've got to get, it's better if you get each step right. I mean, if you get a foundation and you dig a hole and then there's water around and you build a house and everything, and you got water in your cellar all the time, well, that's aggravation. So you try to avoid that in that stage with my painting. And so I do stage one, and I don't give up on it until I feel, this is right. I'm not going to go to stage two, the values stage. And I don't go to the color stage until I get the values in place that I think are right. And I feel much more comfortable working that way. And and that's why I like this idea of this limited palette to it. It simplifies it in my mind. So maybe that's where the engineering comes in to play. I don't know. The other thing maybe with construction was where I spent most of my time. There's a directness about that kind of work. You know, you gotta get this thing done on time. There's a lot of it's like a combat situation. Then all this like machinery out there, men with jackhammers and hammers and all that stuff. And you know, and the construction workers themselves, they don't. Their language is short. You know, bring the dozer. Whatever it is, get out of the way and just do it. And
But
so,
it's obvious that your perspective and your attention to detail is very refined. And do you think that that comes from your experience with your work?
yeah, on engineering,
Yeah.
you got to, you know, if you, I did quite a bit of layout too, laying out these buildings.
Right.
And you know, you gotta get the dimensions right, because you start putting the steel up and you find that some beam doesn't fit a column. You just, no, that's not good. So you do have to put the detail in the time to get it right.
Right.
Yes.
Don't you think the fact that your hobbies have always been sort of outdoors and nature and fishing and hunting, and that you have a lot of maybe unconscious or conscious information about detail that, you know, because you've seen so much of it, that probably influences your work as well?
Yeah, Ray Fish is my fishing buddy.
Yeah.
We've done a lot of it for a long time. Yeah.
Also, the other thing is my brother-in-law, of course, you know, is an engineer, and he's missing a high degree of understanding of aesthetics, which is the opposite to you, and that's always intrigued me. That, you know, why is this guy like boring? I can talk about it. I mean, to the point where he does not like pictures on his walls. He likes the walls blank. I'm serious. There's no paintings or photographs or anything. And I said, Richard, he said, I'm trying, you know, pictures of your family or landscape? He said, oh, no, it gets in the way. Very strange. So anyways, yeah, I just find that intriguing that you have this high sense of the aesthetics.
Well, I love the outdoors. I've done a lot of hunting and fishing. I used to, when I was 6 years old, I'd walk around behind my father and he'd go bird hunting in Connecticut, for instance. And, you know, when I was 12, my father got permission from the state to let me go out hunting below that age with my dog by myself. And I've done, he was always like that. And we'd go out fishing together, different parts of Maine, and I've carried that on all throughout my life. And with you and the trips to beautiful places. There's so much beauty and all you get, you know, yeah, that's important to me, to be the outdoors.
So let me push one subject with you. You and I have discussed this a bit, and I'm going to state my own prejudice, which I'm trying to overcome, with regard to photographs. I've learned that photographs are really helpful for composition, you know, really help you see the, but I don't find it helpful for painting, observational painting. So say more, well, because at least the ones I try, they end up looking like photographs,
yeah.
Imitations of photographs, rather than something else that comes through real light, you know. So I mean, you talked about both. Where are you these days in that?
I think I'm more on the real life thing. I'm going into that direction.
Yeah.
Moving away from photographs. So a lot of it's because emotionally I get quite a different experience out of doing it live, whether it's the scene, a plein air scene of the landscape or painting a portrait. It's just, I hadn't painted portraits for a long time, and I took it up here last week or so when I started this. And to give you the feeling I had, I had four children, 4 girls, little girls. And my father, and she came in with these 2 girls, one 8 years old and one 12. She wanted portraits. And they sat there, you know, and I said, okay, it's take an hour and a half or so. And I was having the girls, one of the girls was just 8-year-old, you know, and I said, well, you turn your head and, you know, just pick a point where you can kind of look. And so when I ask you to look that way, you don't have to do it all the time, but at least want to do some detail. And I was watching her turn her face, she turned, I said, turn sideways, trying to figure the view. And then she turned, I said, no, turn more toward me. I looked in her eyes and, my God, it just, my heart melted right there.
Oh.
She's a beautiful, beautiful young girl. Both the girls were, you know, just, you know, how just the innocent stare, my God. So there was an emotional feeling that I don't get from photographs.
Yeah.
And as a matter of fact, it was so enjoyable, that's why I want to continue doing that. Just for that feeling I get. The landscape, we were doing it, we were getting somewhat that when we went out with, Dan introduced me to plein air painting a couple of years ago. That's how we met up.
This is Dan in the blue
Dan
shirt.
Warren, yeah. And he got me out there with Bill Roberts, that they were painting and some others, and so we'd meet up once a week and paint. You know, it was a new challenge. I was a little reluctant to do that because you know, I'm tied, my apron strings were tied to photographs, and to cut those and go out. Yes.
Isn't part of the discussion that you're wrestling with the idea that painting from a photograph makes you more of a technician? Painting from real life makes you more creative? Not that that is the case, but that is the perception. Whereas you need to be able, if you're painting from a photograph, to still make the photograph transition from a photograph to a painting. It becomes something different when it's painted.
Right.
And therefore, you bring in the creative process when you're doing that. But the idea initially is that when you're painting from a photograph, you are recreating real life.
Yeah, and as we go through the slides, I think you'll see that. That'll come out. How the painting itself looks quite a bit different than the photograph. Not only because I've introduced, subtracted, like Marvin said, your husband said, subtracted and added, but also because of my interpretation and feel how I want to present something. And
I think the challenge, when you're painting from a photograph, you're, correct me if it's wrong for you, but you're more inclined to pay attention to all those fussy little details and try to get it perfect. But when you're outside and there's bugs and there's sun and there's hot, whatever, you're not getting caught up in the details because you're just trying to capture this quick moment.
There are plenty of details outside
But you don't get hung up on those details because you don't have this photograph that you're staring at and going, oh, but that's just a little bit, at least that's what it is for me. Like when I'm outside, I'm just doing it, and then when I go inside, I might capture a photograph to remind myself of something that I didn't capture, but.
with some of this plein air painting, I photographed it before I started doing the scene, and then I did the plein air where we'd be out there a couple of hours, and, you know, kind of got it left out. Then I could go in my studio, and then I could just photograph to kind of help me remember what its colors were, and kind of go further with the painting. But what happened is I did lose the spontaneity every time I did that, almost. If something goes, it's hard to go. Yeah.
But it depends on what you're using the photograph for. If you're using it to capture a color of the sky at a particular time, or a color of a shadow, or a shape of something, that's one thing. If you're trying to recreate the scene as you saw it through the photograph, that's another thing. I quilt, so if I take a pattern, which would be the same thing like a photograph, and I create that pattern
as it is, that's wonderful. I'm doing technical, perfect job. But if I take some fabric that I see that just appeals to me and I think, well, how do I want to put it together? Then I'm taking a pattern and creating my own thing from it, which is what I think you're saying, that you use the photograph as a jumping off point.
Yeah, I guess, and, of course, even before the time of photographic equipment, some of the older artists had ways of setting up a way of projecting the image up on a canvas, you know,
Camera loose stuff.
yeah, as a photographer, and I think, you know, some of the great painters did that kind of thing. So they, you know, they projected the image and then go use that at least for layout. Then the colors do something different, but it's not as though these master painters never used them either, I think. And I know some of them used quite a bit. I can't think of it. He painted a painting of the Charles River. There's a man there with a sculling rig. It's a famous painting.
Tom Bacon?
Yeah. He was,
Tom Bacon?
huh?
Yeah, right.
What was his name?
Akins? Tom
Yes,
Bacon.
Akins. He was a photographer, a very fine photographer. And so he combined his photography work, as I recall reading about it, with his painting too. He used to, you know, maybe that was the first real use of it too, because he had all the equipment in the late 1800s or something, he was able to do that. So, I don't know, what do you say?
I think this is a little off subject, but I had something that relates to that, is that I wanted to paint Jan's portrait, so I painted it, and after it was over, I said, well, what do you think? She didn't like it at all. She wanted me to paint how she wanted to look. So using a photograph, you're not going to get how somebody wants to look.
Deborah Arter, he was in many classes, Deborah Arter, and Deborah named him Marvelous Marvin because he's a great sense of humor, you can see. He uses it all the time, throwing the classes.
She's mentioned Marvelous Marvin to me before.
Yeah, there he is.
May I ask the photographers in the group or here about what does a camera record in terms of, well, color is a vague word actually, but values and hues of, isn't it quite, I mean, do you have a choice? I mean, can't you these days twist it around, you get all, you get...
Yeah, with digital cameras, you can do anything.
Right.
And I mean anything. I don't do digital, I have no interest in digital. But my friends say you can warm the scene, cool the scene.
Yeah, right.
Warm sections, cool sections, open shadows, closed shadows. I mean, it's incredible.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm strictly large format black and white. And so when Bill was talking about reducing his palette, I mean, all I use is gray.
Will you tell me why it is, how it is, that I most appreciate black and white photographs?
Well,
I don't
there's an
understand.
abstraction to it. It's not reality at all, actually. And that's, you know, even Ansel Adams was always admitted that this isn't reality, it's a black and white photograph.
So it's a composition.
Yeah, it's right.
It strips away everything that is not essential, really.
Yeah.
You're looking at the image, you're looking at the composition, and these days it creates that feeling of nostalgia too. So you've got kind of that.
Yeah, well, the palettes of gray can be pretty emotional.
Yeah.
People overlook that.
Yeah. No, it's
Look at
very
Chinese
emotional.
paintings, ink paintings.
Mm.
Well, let's see, it's quarter past 6, it's got it at 5:30. No, I think it's 45 minutes. Can we do the other half, and then we'll have some more talk about?
Bill, I mentioned my wife has a cracked hip and I have to come. I mean, anyways, I'm a nurse now for a couple more weeks, so I have to go home.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks for
Well,
Hope
coming.
to see
thank
you at
you.
the next.
Enjoyed your comments.
Well, you know, my first comment on the first part of your talk, what I enjoyed most is the first 5 minutes you were talking about how you were now 83 years old, but you look like you were 12 years old.
Yeah, I'm just still,
It was inspiring to have that.
I'm still as reckless as I was when I was 12.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Sorry I couldn't stay for the rest.
Dan, he's one of the artists, one of our member artists. That's why you see his work.
I turned the volume way down so that the music won't interfere with your, are you gonna
Yeah,
talk
we
through it a
don't want
little
music
bit?
on this, no.
Okay,
So we'll,
then I'm gonna turn it way, way down.
maybe we need to darken it more too. Yeah. Probably, we might want to darken it.
You want us to turn the lights off?
I'm gonna stand over here then.
Okay. What's the signal?
I'll just be right beside you and say, okay, I don't want to say something or whatever. Yeah. Okay, so we're gonna go through these things and you gotta say all of them, right? Okay. So,
I'm gonna get fine, yeah, Blackie.
you gotta stop it, so.
I think I'm gonna do the,
Perfect.
wait,
You had the arrow.
no, I'm gonna do it different.
Okay.
How come I can't unselect them?
Technical.
I just don't, I wanna unselect all of them, but I don't know how to do that. That gonna do it for me?
Uh-huh. This is, technical is here.
Oh, God, sorry.
I'm glad I'm not.
Artist. Oh, there we are, all right.
And you gotta seize them all, right?
Nope, we're gonna do it completely
We
different.
got something
So,
different.
because we're gonna, so I can advance it when you are ready for it
Okay,
too.
all right, all right. This is the most recent painting, big painting I'm working on. I said I'm doing portraits too, but this is the last time consuming painting in the studio. This is Christopher's cows. It's, he owns a lot of land in Bowdoinham and got cows. And a person in Bowdoinham, a young woman, lives nearby, and she photographed this at this beautiful time of day. And she posted it on the Facebook, Bowdoinham Friends and Family Facebook. And I asked her if I could use the photo in return for providing a canvas print, like one of those to her, do that, and she agreed to it. Because sometimes I see things that photograph, but others are constantly photographing, and some people are coming up with these great photos, and I've done it before. But anyway, that's the story behind it. Go ahead. Okay, so we were talking about this construction now, the step process here, the layout, the values and colors, and I'll show you how I apply it to this painting here. So we start off with the layout. Yeah, next, please. Okay. So now we're talking about real engineering. I love this math stuff. So what I'm going to do is, I have an 8x10 photo, and I want to make a painting that size, which is 22 by 28. So I take the, you can see if I stand over here, you can see the 28, I divide that by 10. Then it comes up with 2.8 is the ratio in size. Then I just check it with the other dimension. I take 22 divided by 8, and I come up with 2.75, 2.8, the first one. That's just, okay, close, that's good. So we'll just use that as a ratio. So what I'm going to do is blow it up. And so I take, back up please, yeah. So I make a print of the photo, and I divide it into these sections, 3 across and 3 down. And you can see the dimensions then are 2.67, 3.33. These are all equal across. 8 divided by 3 is 267 and so on. And then I'm going to blow, I take these, cut them out, put them in my scanner, in my computer. You know, you can blow them up to whatever percentage you want. So I blow them up at 275%. So I've taken this dimension at 2.267 and I blow it up to 2.75 times and come up with 7.33, which is, it's going to fit on an 8-inch, you know, I have an 8-inch paper. So anyways, I do that, and I make 9 of them. each one of these is blown up. Okay, good, next please. Okay, so then I take and a carbon paper, and I take together all of these 9 different squares on the right, and I take together the carbon paper and lay one on top of the other, and then lay them on the canvas, and then I just trace through. I trace the image. Now, it's, a lot of people say, this guy's tracing, that's not right. Well, I have found, I used to take it, you can do it by eye, you can do that, or you can do it by grid, but I found this tracing method, and it just, I get things in the right position, and then I can move from there. And I feel comfortable, I'm starting off pretty good. So go up next please. So here you are, this is the tracing I've made. By just bearing down pretty hard, tracing through the canvas. And that's what I came up with. And that's next, please. Now, I'll use the next step here after I've traced it, the layout step. I'm going into value step. I'm trying to get the sense of the darks and lights and so on, which earlier I said values do all the heavy lifting. So this is very important, and that's what I've learned as I've become painted more and more. The value is something you better start thinking about. So, but anyway, so I use these 3 colors. That's a burnt sienna, I think, on the right, and that would be probably it's a dark blue of some sort, and then a titanium white. So I can, these are, the blue and the orange are complementary in a sense. So if you mix complementary colors together, they turn to black or brown, grayscale. What I could do is just use black and white and just work, with strictly black and white. It's kind of a cold approach though. Mm-hmm. So I'd rather put some color in there, and I can do some things with these colors now. So I use the 3 instead of the 2, and I mix it in different ratios. Next, please. So I've simplified that process too, to just the 3 colors I'm dealing with. Now I can just focus on the relative values. So I start painting these areas in, and to try to, and I have my photograph, and what I've done with, in this case too, is I changed the photograph to black and white, so I can really see the values, because it's hard if they're in color. Then I can try to get the relative differences with these colors. Look at the next, please. So you see I'm progressing a little bit more here, and just painting in these areas. And I feel real comfortable because I know the layout is pretty good. And what you've seen, I've done some subtracting, and I've subtracted out some cows because I'm trying to get some composition. I'm probably going to add a cow or 2 in there too when I get done. Next, please. So I did this version, and I said, well, okay, that's what I think the relative values are. All right, next. So I took a photograph of it, so turned that to black and white. Now, if I just take this photo of the painting, and I can compare it with the photo of the original photo, the real photo, start getting an idea. So, the next. So this is the real deal. This is in black and white. And so you saw it was in the previous screen. Well, if you go back there just a minute, I can see, well, okay, this is the light, the whole pasture. And the trees up there need to be darker. So it kind of gives me a gauge. And then go ahead, please. So I do that, and so I start changing those colors, and that's, I can keep going. Okay, so that's it. Well, I'll go back to this now. So that's what I ended up with, is a value painting. Now I'm going to go over that with oils, with full color oils. So this is acrylic, so it provides a very good base for oils. So now, this would be, if you make a a metaphor to building construction. We've got the frame up and the cladding up now, and everything's good. I got it enclosed when the winter rains and cold comes, we work inside nice and comfortable, and I feel comfortable, you know, that I'm gonna be able to proceed with this thing. So that's the stage I'm at. And like I said, I'll probably add some cows in there or something. But here, you can see, I've got some work to do in here. I've got to get these details right. There's some little flowers here and little grass, and it's very important to get these right. But I've got the, I feel, you know, anyways, okay, next show, okay.
Bill,
Yes.
I'm curious what you want the space to feel like in the upper left-hand corner. The tree area is blocked in, like this is the block-in stage.
Yeah.
Do you want the space to feel like you're moving behind the trees? Like, what do you want that space to feel like? Will you go back in and put lights in?
Yeah,
Because in the
well,
photograph, there are little areas where you can see through the trees to the back space. So do you want it to feel like you're moving through the trees there,
yeah,
or will they be
that's-
solid?
Yeah, see, that's pretty complicated thinking, and that's why I didn't fool around too much with the value stage. That's going to be a part of the color stage, which is, for me, it's not easy to figure that out, how to make these trees look diffuse rather than solid. Right.
So you'll go back in at the end, and you want it to feel like they're pulling away.
You can go through the trees, right?
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
well, I have to do that with the colors in some way, and I'm not sure how to do it. It's an adventure in a way. I've done enough painting, but
You're talking about,
many times I can't
I
get-
can see, like, you could see through the trees and just a hint of the field behind it. Is that what you're referring to?
Right, I'm asking
Yeah.
if you want
And
to,
then over on the very left edge there, there's a hole there.
right.
That helps you.
I'm asking if you want it to feel like you're moving through
No, I
it.
want it to be open.
Because some painters, like in the 1930s, which I'm seeing like some 1930s feel to some of your work, there's a solidity about the shapes, and the artists they're blocking the space.
Right.
Whereas in the photograph that you're showing, you can see through those little snippets of brights
Yeah.
that are further away.
Yeah.
So you'll go back in and you'll put those in. So you'll go block in and then,
Yeah, it's not gonna be easy.
okay.
The difference is the cow, for instance,
That
that's
makes sense.
solid. It's a solid thing. But once you get into something that's not solid, all the space between the cow and the trees in the background is not solid either.
Because you could make the painting in a lot of different ways. What I'm interested to know from you is what do you want the space to feel like, and what is the image ultimately, where are you going with this image, do you think?
Ultimately, I guess, ultimately, you're getting into emotion and feelings, tenderness, whatever you want to call it. And the fact that I love Bowdoinham, I'm so glad I can see a scene like this. That's starting to enter into, I've got to try to reproduce this in some way. The experience I'm feeling, and right, this is wonderful the way these cows are, because the colors, and I don't know, I guess that's not the way I can answer that.
So if I could ask it perhaps in another way, in terms of reproducing that feeling that you, along with perhaps the photographer, had, which for me also includes that seeing through to the I presume it's a house or a river and the white and so on,
It does.
is, to what degree is that a technical issue for you, or one about your commitment or interest in reproducing some sense of when you were there, the photographer was there, of seeing
So
through that space?
it's the feeling, the latter part that comes into play there. Yeah, that's where you separate the men from the boys. Whatever, or the women from the girls.
So you're gonna go back in, like, I see a warmth in that background area, there's some warm oranges,
Yeah.
and right now the painting is pretty cool in value, there's a coolness. So do you go
That is
back
cool,
in?
because I've only used no colors to speak of.
Right.
I can't wait to use the warm colors, you know, jeez. It's like, but just hold off, Bill, get this right first, then do that.
So you're thinking about warm, cool later on in the Okay,
That's exactly right. I'm just thinking about light, dark values in that sense, yes.
okay.
Yeah, because with color, you're talking about hue. And then you're talking about chroma, I guess, which is a combination of light and dark color, but also saturation, where they're muted or they're highly colored. So you have these qualities are part of the colors you got to work with and use them to your advantage. And we get this more technical side and try to use those things. The other problem too is the distance near or far, because the further away it gets, the things fade and get more muted. So I certainly don't want to get the cow muted in the front and then the really saturated colors in the back, get it reversed. But so, yeah. Okay, we'll present.
I'm a little curious about one thing, please. You're talking about the values. You don't use a separate value sketch then? Some painters will do a value sketch, a black and white, you know, that type of thing, so that they have that, you know, sketch charcoal, or it could be paint, and they'll have that to refer to.
Yeah.
You like go for it.
Right on the painting
Right
itself.
on the
is a
paint.
step. Yeah, right, yeah. No,
I just
I
wondered
don't
if
do
you ever
that.
tried that,
Yeah,
or if that
yeah.
would.
I do that with other things, details. If I make some trees, for instance, or an apple orchard, and then I don't want to work on it, I have a small painting, I work out that stuff till I get it, then go back.
Okay.
Yeah, but the values, no.
Yeah, kind of to your question, you were saying that you're segueing from photographs to working on site from observation. So do you think that doing some little small preparatory sketches, will that come into play as you go out into do plein air more often? Like
Yeah,
to do like a few, so that you get that feel that you're
Well,
after in your
you have to
work?
go on site
Right,
and do
that's
these
what I'm
sketches,
saying.
and then go back again with the paints, something like that, yeah. I have maybe yeah, so, and that would be kind of the layout stage. I don't know what you were talking about, but the value stage. But my plein air painting is I'm in the value stage, and I'm trying to combine that with the layout, which you'll see here, and then I have just a few colors. Is what I've been working with. I'm trying to get better. That's what I'm trying to develop, so I can go out and do, you know, more color. But I'm trying to get the values right, and how work fast with all these conditions outside. You know, I'm using oil paints for one thing, and just having things, you know, being able to clean your brush, all that stuff. I'm still dealing with that stuff. Yeah. I don't know. Okay, let's move on. Catherine. Okay. This is a photograph by this wildlife photographer in Bowdoinham. I mean, she was a woman, she's a woman about 70, I think. She used to be a long haul truck driver. I mean, one of the really big trucks. Well, anyway, she's a gifted photographer. She goes out kayaking in the morning. She takes these fabulous pictures, and she put one on the thing. And I said, gee, got a hold of her. I'd like to use that. So it was this picture, and then the next one to show the next one. And that's another picture she took. So I like these two pictures, but what I want to do is combine them. And, which you'll see, go ahead, next one, yeah. So now I combine them. And this is the value drawing. This is only probably burnt umber, Prussian blue, and white. Just those three colors to get the values. I did introduce some yellow because I just needed to do something with the eagle, because I reward myself for working so hard. But anyways, so this is how I combined them, and then you can see I've made some changes. But now I'm taking two photographs, putting them together, and then next please. And now so now I'm going to go into the color stage, and we talked about this quite a bit. Anyway, I thought I'd throw those things on there. These things I keep in mind. We have the for color wheel, which I think I have to keep that in mind all the time. And you have the primary colors. You have the blue and the yellow and the red. But but also you have these complementary colors. They're always opposite one another on a color wheel. But the thing that's so important is that that's how you mute a color. If you have a red that's a strong red and you want to calm it down, go for the complementary or anything. Even if you're in between the red and the purple, whatever that is, a red purple, you go up to that green there between the yellow and the green. You put those two together, and you start to get these values. You know, so I use that a lot as a way to regulate these colors. And by the same token, if I want something in intensity in the color, I use adjacent colors. If I've got a yellow, I'm going to stay up in that orange-green area. Because I don't want to deaden anything. I want to keep it alive. So there are times, you know, when I want to be careful where I'm going on this circuit. That's all. Next, please. And then you have, of course, the warm, cool colors. And again, in art, which I mentioned in the video, contrast is one of the principles of good art. So to play against warm colors against cool colors is important too. And of course, if you're doing a painting of something in the shadows and something in the sun, you don't want to get them balled up. You want to have the warm colors in the sun and the cool colors in the shade, right? But anyways, so that's another thing that I'd be mindful of. Next, please. So when I'm doing the eagle, the way I'm just showing you how I go about this with that picture. I spread out some colors here. I'm just going to do the eagle part. And I get these colors, squeeze out of my tubes, that are in there, 4 or 5 on top. But then I mix them right on the palette. So I've got everything I need right there in that block for that eagle. And I can just pick and choose. You know, I've got them pre-made. It's nice there, and I just have to say, well, what color is that? And when you go from the black to the brown, there's an in-between two, which is, you can really get a good range. And I can always add in some more or something. But next, please. This is the finished product. I have a print made. I sell prints. And so, and I asked the guy that makes them to put that word in this particular print. You can buy the thing as for me, as the original, or you can buy one of these canvas prints, or you can buy something with that caption on there, a signed print. And so it's a Cahans River. This is a common scene in Bowdoinham. I try to do scenes that people are familiar with in Bowdoinham. So that's an incident. Thanks, River, how I named it. Okay, next. All right, so here's that painting over there. That's the stretched canvas, not the real painting. And I started with this photograph. This farmer in Brunswick, Bowdoinham, planted these poppies at the entrance to their farm, Stone Cycle Farm. She put the photograph on, oh my God, this is something else. So I went to see her. She said, sure, paint it up, and I'll give you a print. So next, please. So we're going to use that photo. This is how I did this. Okay, so I've done the tracing. You can see the tracing. It's pretty simple. I'm just trying to position things. You know, I got a whole lot of flowers here. They're all everywhere, and it helps me a lot if I get them positioned right. So the white are all going to be red. So I'm starting to show you these different